Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and today we're going to be talking about abhumans known as Beastmen. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions, please comment down below. And don't forget to thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can make these videos. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Beastmen. The abhumans, known as Beastmen, are a subspecies that appears to be a combination of baseline humans and some form of animal. While technically not all Beastmen look alike, most of these abhumans appear to be human and goat hybrids. They will always have hooved feet, goat or ram heads, and fur on the thighs and speckled on the back and chest, but the rest of the body and mind will be humanoid. What makes them true abhumans, and not simply mutants, is their relatively stable genome. This means that they all follow a relatively general physical and genetic standard, and are not prone to further mutation, unless influenced by the powers of chaos, a genetic strength common to normal humans. Imperial savants speculate that the first Beastmen were not created as a result of environmental conditions like most abhumans, but rather they were created deliberately by ancient man. During the Dark Age of technology, when humanity had a strong grasp on scientific knowledge, it is speculated that mankind attempted to push the boundaries of human DNA and experiment with genetic engineering. So advanced was ancient man's ability to genetically modify our DNA that eventually the goal of creating human-animal hybrids was attempted. It is believed that the Beastmen are a result of this widely successful hybrid experiment. It is unclear, but most evidence points to these experiments occurring not just on one planet, rather the entire whole of the old Federation, which explains the wide variety of Beastmen found all over the galaxy and living alongside ancient man. Whether these early Beastmen were seen as equals amongst man, or whether they served as a labor class on some worlds is unclear. The few Imperial savants with some knowledge on this matter speculate that it was a combination of the two. The Beastmen that appear more goat-like might have been created this way as a means to justify their use as a labor or slave force by some human planets, and the more human-looking hybrids might have shared civil rights like any other human in the Federation. Why the most common hybrid was a goat is also a mystery. It is known that ancient Terran religions saw the goat as a form of a deity, sometimes malicious and sometimes benevolent. If the first Beastmen were created due to religious purposes, those origins are now lost to time. Eventually, the Age of Strife devastated all of mankind, and the Beastmen were just as vulnerable to the temptations of chaos as any other human. This might be when humanity connected the Beastmen to the powers of the warp, as they watched their already twisted bodies contort to the whims of chaos. Within time, some human survivors viewed the bestial and aggressive Beastmen as the cause to so many of humanity's problems, concluding that this subspecies was chaotic at its core. There were still those Beastmen that were of strong enough will to avoid the calling of chaos, and they fought alongside man as they were assaulted by everything the Age of Strife threw at them, from the Men of Iron to the Xeno Raiders. When the Great Crusade finally arrived, the Beastmen that remained loyal to mankind were recruited into the ranks of the Imperial Army as part of the massive galactic expansion of the new Imperium of Man. Beastmen in the Imperial Army were regarded as useful, if highly undisciplined warriors, and were ideal for suicidal assaults where brawn rather than tactical intellect was required. Other Imperial troops disliked them intensely, as they were quite rowdy, unsanitary, and generally unpleasant for baseline humans to deal with. In their ignorance, the Imperial Army made no effort to distinguish characteristics that marked any differences, physically or socially, within the Beastmen culture. Any social hierarchy, apart from the simple supremacy of the strongest, was completely ignored. This is a mistake often made by humans, whose judgment of the Beastmen is overwhelmed by brutal power and savagery of these creatures. But in fact, Beastmen society was and still is very precise and ordered, and there are several distinct levels of class and rank. The few xenobiologists that took an interest in the Beastmen societies that were being discovered during the Great Crusade were able to distinguish three distinct types of Beastmen. The most common were known as Gors. These were the Beastmen that possessed horns, and This class was further divided into 3 main types of gores, based on the way their horns grew. Capra gores possessed curling or straight goat-like horns. Bovigores were ox-headed beasts with cattle-like horns, and the final subclass was the ungores. These beastmen possessed small, often misshapen horns, and appeared the most humanoid. Then there were those beastmen that lacked any form of horns, yet still maintained the appearance of a goat-human hybrid. They were referred to as brays, and they were noted as being the lowest class of beastmen. The final class was an unusually large and aggressive strain of giant beastmen referred to as minotaurs, a name derived from the ancient Terran mythological monster. They were comparable in physical size and strength to the ogrins. These creatures are massive, bull-headed monstrosities that constantly hunger for hot blood and red meat, often growing to twice the height of a man and far greater in muscular bulk. Their thick-skulled heads are broad and ugly, and their horns can eviscerate with a single thrust. The Minotaur suffered from a terrible flaw. They possessed a terrible hunger for flesh, particularly the flesh of mankind. Yet it is not the gnawing hunger a mortal feels when deprived of sustenance, but a deep thirst for the unholy exhilaration the Minotaurs experience when they consume the flesh of their enemies. This practice terrified humans, but it proved very effective at striking fear to the enemies and preventing rebellions once a planet was brought into the Imperial fold. Following the events of the galaxy-wide civil war known as the Horus Heresy, and the subsequent restructuring of the Imperial armed forces by the Ultramarines Legion Primarch Gilliman, according to the dictates of his magnum opus, the Codex Astartes, Beastmen regiments were retained in the newborn Astra Militarum, where they were often led by the largest and most powerful of their kind, known as Packmasters. Eventually, Beastmen were introduced into the Imperial cult by the missionaries of the Adeptus Ministorum. These Beastmen possessed a simple but fierce devotion to the Emperor of Mankind, and regarded him as a vengeful god who demanded tribute in the form of the blood of his enemies. These fanatically religious Beastmen were driven by the need to atone for their original sin of being mutants by fighting in the service of the Emperor. In recent centuries, there has been a political shift within the Imperium, and unfortunately Beastmen are no longer seen in the Imperial military services. No doubt the more Puritan elements of the Inquisition convinced the Departamentatorum that Beastmen could not be so radically different from the genetic human baseline without having been in some way affected by the taint of chaos. Beastmen are now often classified as mutants, and as a result are the subject to severe Imperial persecution and have been placed on the register of proscribed citizens by the Adeptus Arbites. This effectively precludes them from settlement on or transportation to or from more than 300,000 worlds of the Imperium, and forbids their conscription as part of Imperial tithes. All of this is a sure sign that they may soon lose abhuman status completely and be reclassified as true mutants. These creatures are often hunted down during anti-mutant programs conducted by the Adeptus Arbites on those worlds where populations of Beastmen are known to exist. This persecution, of course, has led to many Beastmen seeking out protection in the service of chaos, thus in effect producing a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nevertheless, respectable Beastmen still exist within the Imperium of Man. In recent history, one of these Beastmen managed to make a name for himself as a bounty hunter in the underhive of Necromundus Hive Primus, known as Gore Halfhorn. As a sanctioned bounty hunter, Gore is entitled to go wherever he wants to in pursuit of his targets, but in reality he has often found himself the quarry, though so far none have bested him. Because it is so rare for a Beastman to be a sanctioned bounty hunter, Gore has become the subject of numerous legends throughout the Underhive. Some say he was once a member of the Abhuman Militarum Auxiliary Unit attached to an Astra Militarum regiment. He was the sole survivor of a battle of apocalyptic proportions. Others whisper that he was once in the employ of an inquisitor, whose service he fled for a life amongst the damned. Some have even claimed that he was not born an abhuman, but a noble scion who developed hideous mutations in his adolescence and fled down Hive lest he be put to death by his own kin. None dare to inquire of Gore himself what the truth might be, for all know his response will be swift and lethal. The majority of Beastmen that turn to Chaos will live completely different lives than that of Gorhalf-Horn. The ruinous powers look upon Beastmen with special favor, and chaotic gifts are often granted to those Beastmen who become champions of Chaos, even though they may never serve no specific Chaos god. Champions who do follow Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, or Tzeentch often benefit from the relationship more readily than humans or other Chaos champions, because they are closer to the true nature of Chaos. Those Beastmen who serve the blood god Khorne are known as Khorngors. The signature of Khorne is displayed clearly upon the form of the blood god's Beastmen. They have canine heads or faces, fierce snapping jaws, and teeth which drip with rank saliva. Their skin or fur is usually red, and their eyes are white with red pupils. Khorngor champions often have fur which is especially impressive, either bright red, black with red flecks, or strange metallic brassy color. If the Beastman has horns, these may twist into the shape of the skull god-like runes known as the Mark of Khorne. The same rune is often painted or burned onto their skin or fur and can be tattooed on their exposed foreheads. Beastmen of Khorne always fight in their own units, although they can be led by a Beastman champion, so long as he does not follow any other Chaos god. Beastmen of Khorne hate enemies who are mortal followers of Slaanesh, including Beastmen who follow that patron. They also hate all enemy Chaos sorcerers. They do not hate enemy shamans, who also follow Khorne, as they cannot cast sorcerer spells, but have the power to nullify psychic abilities. Their hatred only applies to enemy troops, never allies, if they are followers of another ruinous power. The Pestigors, the Beastmen of Nurgle, have blisters and broken skin, often red with cracked flesh, and sores which have been given to them by a generous master. Their fur is matted and coarse, and their bodies are riddled with all kinds of diseases. Yet they retain the morbid vigor that categorizes their master, so their affliction is no way in hindrance of their battle worthiness. The Mark of Nurgle is carved into their armor, dabbed upon their clothes, and sometimes etched upon the skin by the path of a disfigured disease. Many Beastmen of Nurgle carry Nurgle's rot, although thanks to their loyalty to Grandfather, the terrible arcane disease will not affect them, they merely spread it. Beastmen of the Chaos god Slaanesh, known as Slangors, have white or near white fur and pale or pastel skin. Their eyes are green and sometimes saucer-like, in similar way to those of the Demonettes. The Mark of Slaanesh appears somewhere on them, painted on their hides or carved into their armor, a bracelet or neck collar. Many of Slaanesh's Beastmen have the heads or horns of a bull, known as a Bovigor, just like the greater demons of their patron god. True to the changer of ways, Beastmen of Tzeentch, known as Tzeentchgors, are spectacularly variable. They often have at least one outstanding feature, either brightly colored or exotically patterned fur, or very impressively colored or shaped horns. Other mutations are a commonplace among Zagors. Where other Beastmen often have mutations, Beastmen of Tzeentch always have at least one. And those were 40 facts on the Beastmen of Warhammer 40K. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends on Facebook, Reddit, whatever social media you guys use, and thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. If you guys want to support us, it's just $1 a month. So you probably spend more by just stepping into a GW and breathing their air. But you can do that by clicking on the link in the description. Thank you guys so much ahead of time. I just recently started a Beastman army for Age of Sigmar. So the 40K rules don't exist. And I've always really liked the aesthetic of the Beastmen, with or without like the Imperial Guard uniform. So I really wanted I was very excited when I finally went through and bought the starter set for the Beastmen, the Beasts of Chaos. And I'm painting stuff and building stuff. I'm trying to get the army done by mid-November. So check out the Instagram page, the One Mind Syndicate Instagram page. I'm going to be updating that with a lot of the pictures of what I'm painting for the Beastmen. So if you're into that, jump on over there. But thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.